All right.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Sarah Jane Parsons. I'm the director and curator here at the art galleries at TCU. Really delighted that you can join us today. And I'm here with our three guest artists, Brigitte Jurack, Chris Powell, and Kiran Sattar. And we're super excited to be able to launch their new exhibition website today, diggingtogether.com. I hope you've also got that website open as we're talking today. I'm going to do a few introductions, and then we're just going to get straight to looking at some art, which is the best part of our week, right? Brigitte Jurack is head of sculpture at Manchester Metropolitan University, and she joins us today from Spittal, which is on the Wirral in northwest England, sort of between Liverpool and Manchester. She's in that part of the world. Chris Powell, professor of art here at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, Texas, where he teaches ceramics, and he's joining us today from his studio here in Fort Worth. And Kiran Sattar from Glossop in Derbyshire, she is our digging connector. She's really what brings us kind of here today and kind of really sort of initiated the connections that brought this project together. She was a student of Brigitte's at MMU as an undergraduate, and then she completed her MFA here at TCU under the guidance of Chris. So the three of them are connected through practice, through teaching, through mentoring, through friendship, and through digging, which is why we're here. This is an exhibition that we originally conceived of just through very informal conversations that would take place at the Fort Worth Contemporary Arts Gallery here on the TCU campus, would open in August of last year, 2020. And of course, we were not able to do that really because of the nature of the exhibition. We wanted to make a show that would change over time. The artists, Brigitte and Kiran, were coming from England. They would be here for a period of residency. They would make work. They would then go back to the UK. Meanwhile, Chris and his students would make work responding to their work. And there would be this ongoing, changing, evolving exhibition that would actually happen in the gallery. And of course, we just were not able to do that because of the pandemic restrictions. And so instead, because we were really enjoying the development of the project, we wanted to think about a way to continue the work and not lose the momentum that we had and kind of be in the moment. And so our way of adapting to that situation was to suggest to the artists, could we make an exhibition website? Could we make a virtual place for them to bring their ideas and objects and experiments together? So that's exactly what we've done. And that's what diggingtogether.com is. And as part of this process, I should say that we worked with a website designer, Tony Carranza. We're really thrilled with what he was able to do for us. And I hope he's watching. I know he's traveling, so I hope he's watching and can join in. And also Cosme Olivas, who was our developer. Thank you both to them for their time and energy, and especially your patience in working with me. I'm a total website noob. So they were very patient as I asked lots of silly questions. But anyway, our format for today, the artists are going to talk for a few minutes individually about their own practices. And then we'll talk talk together about the ideas of digging, about the collaborative work they've already done, and really sort of what happens next. The website is in its most emergent phase. It's its initial presentation, and so it's going to grow and change over the next year. So we'll talk about some of the things the artists have lined up, and kind of see what mischief they're going to dig around and find for us. Yes, there'll be lots of puns today, I think. Okay, so we're going to start with Brigitte. Brigitte, you're going to tell us a little bit about your practice and your background, and we're going to look at some images of your work.
First of all, thank you very much, Sarah Jane, for inviting me, and thank you very much for Kieran for introducing me to Chris. I was delighted that I was able to visit you a year and a half ago over in Texas, and actually walk around the beautiful campus you occupy. So thank you very much. So next slide. There's only 5 slides, so it will be very short, or maybe it's 6. And I'm showing you this slide with not many comments, except that I am taking my students usually once a year to an amazing art and ecology center in the middle of nowhere in Spain. Obviously, that also didn't take place in the last year. And during that time, it's a week-long residency, I've started to develop very sort of light touch works in the environment, which don't leave much of a sort of environmental impact. This is a very simple watercolor drawing on the rock face of a dried out riverbed, which eventually will be bleached away, since this is an area of Spain which is extremely arid and has like next to no rainfall whatsoever. And next slide, please. And here I asked a group of students with whom I travel to this place. We're usually 20 people maximum, so there's a few more bodies lying around in this almond field. This idea was really for me to almost reenact early Christian imagery of trees growing out of bodies, and also the sort of this idea of the Jesse tree, this sort of idea that we are connected to the non-human environment and ultimately interdependent. So it's a sort of, you know, quite clearly a sort of this sort of kind of the fact that we are not apart from each other, but connected. Next slide, please. Oh, yes. So I'm going to talk a little bit later when we have a question and answer session about this sort of idea of site responsive or site sensitive work. So my brain works best if I actually get excited by a site or something I am seeing and observing. In this case, it's 2 animal species which are incredibly adaptable to environmental changes. The crows also have a very long history with human, you know, kind of narratives. We all know Aesop's fables. We know that they are the monkeys of the sky. Their oversized brains make them adaptable to live in most extreme conditions. And foxes have now kind of developed completely new behavior patterns once they move into the urban setting. I believe the American coyotes do something very similar. Next slide, please. And yes, and these animals all started with me 2 years ago, being for a month in New Delhi, which is a multi-million people conurbation. And next to these multi-billion people live thousands and thousands of monkeys, to which the Delian civilization has a love-hate relationship, since they embody divine incarnation. but at the same time, they are obviously also a hazard. So the sort of, again, is sort of kind of trying to develop a relationship which is beyond this sort of, consuming a relationship we have with the animal and plant kingdom. I think that's the last slide. Or maybe there's one more. Yes, there is in total about 30 monkeys, but I'm only showing you 2 of them. I think that's the last slide. No, I'm lying. I'm sneaked another one in, and but it's connected to fables. We all know that it's connected not only to fables, but to this sort of not long historical narratives. This particular is a rock, I call it the rock on speed, is kind of connected to the sort of idea of fantasy landscapes more than real landscapes. So the sort of idea of very special places, which are kind of connected to fiction, like Lord of the Flies or some Taylor Wood's Republic of Trees. So where the landscape becomes distorted and becomes sort of occupying a sort of utopian, dreamlike world. That's it now.
Thank you, Brigitte. That's a lot just in a few slides. So I'm starting to pull out some of those digging threads and ideas. Chris, help us weave the stories a little bit more.
Okay, let's see this slide. Yeah, so I was just, first I want to thank Sarah Jane and Lene, because I am super excited about this new format of having a piece of art that's a website. I would never have done such a thing without y'all's a little bit of push from y'all to do it, because I'm going, hey, it just can't happen. So the very first thing I learned is that the definition of a digger is kind of a farmer that just takes wherever is available. And I come up from a long line of farmers. My great-great-grandfather raised apples in south central Arkansas, and then he turned it into apple cider, and then he distilled the apple cider into brandy, and then he exported the brandy. So without starting with the digging and making the apples, we couldn't have had that export to take. I mean, we're taking it across the Mississippi. We're taking it as far as we can and selling that brandy. This hand tiller, my mother bought in 1957, the spring before I was born in the fall. And she planted her first garden in Arkansas that spring. She was a girl from the mountains, and she had no idea that it was so easy to grow weeds in Arkansas. So she would run this thing up and down, trying to keep the weeds out of it. Next slide, Lene. This is the smallest garden I've ever made. It's lives inside of a saucer for a teacup, and it has a glass lid that covers it and makes it kind of a terrarium, or it would dry out so quick it couldn't live. I always like to work small, and then I like to explode and work as big as I can. So the next slide, please, Lene. This is the biggest garden that I've got going. Right here is a plant that I'm introducing to the site that would have been prevalent, 150 years ago on the same site. But in that length of time, my great-great-grandfather would come in, and others would come in, and they cleared the land, and they farmed the land, and they grazed the land until this breed of grass was no longer there. This is the eastern grama grass. And since this photo has been taken, I took it out of I've enlarged the fence that's containing it, because there's still cattle grazing this site, and they would devastate it because it's so tasty. At some point, I hope to continue to develop this site where we fence it off from cattle. And also this image is tricksy because I've included a image of the Tuchigama kiln in the background, and we can talk about that later. So that's kind of the big and the little of my farming experience. Let's see the next slide, Lene. So here's a big clay piece that I've done. And the day that I took the caution tape off of the piece and opened it up, minutes later, kids were climbing all over it. And that's the biggest clay piece that I've done to date. I currently have one going in the studio that is larger, and it'll be fired as soon as it's dried. I just love seeing, oh, that's another part of my work. So the interaction, I love seeing hands on pieces where look at that child's hand as he holds the ear, or that the girl's hand as she rests on the back of the pony. Interaction and connection is a big part of my work. Let's see the last slide. So I also work very small. This was a piece executed in 5 minutes in clay, and then it's got a lifetime of glaze composition and glaze and kiln firing behind it that I don't know. So when you say how long did it take to make this piece, it's really hard to say. But this is a piece that is visually active, but it's not anything until the person picks it up. And it's probably 2 inches from nose to tail. No, 2.5. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And I should say it's quite usual to walk into the School of Art building here at TCU and Chris hands you a little thing like this or put something in your palm and sort of activates your day.
I think it's the way I talk, Sarah Jane.
Yeah, I think it is. And it's such a beautiful entrance to the building and to put you in a place of thinking about making and the touch of objects and the value of them and that scale is just really intimate and really fun. So I'm really always excited when that happens, when I come in and you hand me a little tiny thing that you just made. Thank you, Chris. I think we've got a good idea of kind of the scale and some of the variety of the projects that you're working on. And I'm glad you included the Tuchigama kiln. And yeah, we'll talk about clay and Japanese traditions as well. Kieran, okay, our digging connector. Kieran, take us through your work. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, thank you so much for doing all this as well. Really appreciate it. And it's nice to see everyone. It's a shame that we can't all be together, but it's been great doing all the Zoom calls. So let's get started. Thanks, Lene. So my practice is very heavily process-based. Like I like to go on this journey with the products that are being made, and it's mostly about getting to that point and then rather than the final design. So this piece, sack face, was a big lump of clay. It was just from the bottom of the reclaim barrel. And Chris wanted us to get rid of it as quickly as possible, do something with it. So I started getting those pieces of burlap, all the bits that I could find. So this was a solid piece of clay in the burlap, and it was squished and squashed and hit, thrown, all sorts of things happened to it. And then we just let it dry out and then fired it. And this is how it came out. So all those little nice bits of texture you see are the clay that's got soaked up into the burlap and then burnt away. Next slide. So this was my thesis show at TCU. Again, it's ceramic. My practice I think it was in my second year when I was there, when I started being a TA, that's when I really got into ceramics. And still it was kind of about this, keeping it quite natural as well. So most of the stuff in the show was clay and hair, my hair. A lot of the pieces were smoke fired as well, in a bin outside. So you never really know how it's going to come out until right at the end, like you open the bin and then it's either these really nice lovely textures on there, or it's all just completely black. Like you'll never know until you've opened it. Next slide. This one was, I did this at MMU. So when I came back from TCU, I ended up going back to MMU and I was teaching there for a year. So these are like really, really small pieces. Again, it's about the texture and the process. So the first one, the smallest one with all those little holes inside, that's completely solid, and then the other one is hollow, and the texture on the outside is just pencil crayons. So I always like to kind of push the boundaries to figure out like what else I can do to it. Do you have to use glaze? Do you not have to use glaze? Like how else can you bring out the textures of clay? So it was literally just coloring it in with pencil crayons, rubbing it, coloring it, rubbing it, and going through this process as many times as I wanted to, really. And again, they were just really small pieces, just a nice little experiment to do. Next slide. So thinking about the show and things that we wanted to do for it, this was made last summer. I went through this phase of digging up the back garden. We have got a lot of clay in the garden. I think Glossop's like full of it. So I was digging all the bits of clumps out of the garden and then processing it to actually make workable clay. So you can see it's been dug up, it's been sieved, it's been drained, sieved again, it's been dried out, and then that last corner picture is what we can use then. So it's really nice to throw and hand build with, and we were hoping to be able to do stuff with that for the digging show. But obviously because of COVID, we've not been able to do any workshops or anything. But the idea would have been to make some bells or to make some little nice objects and have them like maybe put around the studio, maybe even sent to TCU as well. Next slide. So with this clay as well, I've been thinking about what else we could do with it. And I thought something that would be quite nice is to do some drawings from it. So this is actually just the clay on paper. This specific one has been wedged and then dragged down the paper, and then there's a few other studies in there as well where the clay's just been thrown at paper, just to see the kind of marks that we can get and the different textures that come out and the different colors. And I think that's it.
Thanks, Karen. That's great to see a range of things across 2 countries and kind of 2 elements of practice. And could you just tell us, I know you have obviously your personal practice, your own studio time, but you have been trying to run a public studio. Could you talk a little bit about that as a new business that you've started?
Yeah, well, it's let's not talk about it at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Because COVID's I've not been open, but when I first started, it was really good. I was getting the whole community was really involved, like children. I was working from like 3+, so I had like really small kids in to like older people that had retired, people with disabilities as well. It was open for everyone to come and attend workshops, learn about clay, make their own work. It was getting really popular. It was a lot of fun, and the community were really engaging with it. I think it was a nice therapy for everyone. So I can't wait to open again.
Right. And we should say that in England, the lockdown restrictions are pretty harsh. I mean, they're difficult you can't move around and do a lot of things like you can here, for example, in the US. And certainly to do any kind of collaborative studio work like this in a small area, small space, you're just not able to do. So I hope that will change for you. But from afar, just, watching your practice and seeing you, graduate with your MFA and move out into the world as an artist, and to see you doing this initiative has just been brilliant to watch. So I hope it opens up again safely at some point. Thank you very much, all of you. I think I've been taking a few notes, just thinking about sort of the threads or the conversations, the materials, the things that sort of connect and weave some of your ideas together. And so I'd like to talk a little bit more specifically about digging and kind of pull at those threads so that we can help our viewers really understand what digging is, what this exhibition, this virtual, this online website exhibition is. So who'd like to just jump in and tell people what digging is?
Hang on. Shall I say something first?
Yeah, go for it.
Why not? Right. So where do we start? We're all sculptors, I think, kind of, born and bred to make things. So, and I think we like standing on terra firma, which means the kind of firm ground. And in a way, like Kieran is kind of shown with her reconditioning of the earth in her back garden, so to speak. In most parts of the world, there is earth we could turn into sculptures. But when we were hit by the pandemic, none of us could actually make anything anymore. Or many people of us couldn't make anything anymore, neither the students. So we were all making art in our bedrooms. Or, like the government in England allowed us, go outdoors into the fresh air and rediscover the countryside around you. So I think that sort of one aspect is actually that COVID, I mean, I think digging can be understood without COVID, but it has a different meaning with COVID. So I think it's a with COVID in the background, it's a kind of trying to reconnect, which we think, or I personally think, is absolutely essential to make an ecological turn. We can't carry on like this, everyone knows it, but the only way we are not going to do it is by actually reconnecting with earth, reconnecting with animals, reconnecting with trees. So that's one aspect. And the other aspect is, of course, that it is the sort of the earth or the stone or the rocks underneath the earth are the sort of, archetypal sculpture materials, from prehistoric times.
And with that, with those materials, a sense of location, a sense of being site specific. And I should tell people that we're referring to the project as digging. It actually has a full title, which is Digging At, and then a set of coordinates that I'm not going to read all the numbers, but a set of coordinates that locate it on the campus of TCU. So we're using TCU as kind of a base, a location, a site to explore a lot of these different ideas, right?
Yes, and I'm going to do one more comment to that, and then I'll put myself on silent. But the other thing was when I don't know how Kieran felt when she 5 years ago came to Texas, but when I came 2 years ago, I mean, I was absolutely blown away by the incredibly beautiful green campus, and it's like kind of almost too perfect, I mean, it was just so lush and everything, and in Manchester is the city with hardly any parks. It's completely built up, and it gets day by day more like Dallas, downtown Dallas, one tower block goes up after another one. So there was this lushness, but then when you realize there was something there before, because obviously the campus was built in the middle of a crisis during the Second World War. So in the middle of a crisis, a previous crisis, which is now quite some time ago, these garden architects and the planners for the university had this amazing vision of making this green campus. So I think that for me makes my digging and my drawing ideas very site specific, because everything we admire is based on something being dug and turned.
Right. In just a very basic, whether you're using your hands, a equipment, or a digger, however you're doing that, you're moving earth to make things and create change, right?
Yeah. And the question is, what kind of vision is that based on? So anyway, I shut up.
Well, I think we'll see digging proposes a different kind of vision. Chris, do you want to talk about kind of what the vision of digging is for you, and kind of what some of the projects are that you have in mind for the coming months?
Yeah. And Brigitte, take unmute yourself because this is a conversation. As Brigitte was talking, I heard the word lush, but I didn't hear, it's like super, super manicured. Just one of the things that I'm thinking about that would be ongoing is a little niche that I'm called life in the cracks. So these will be the unusual kind of, maybe they'd be called weeds, but maybe they have real names like marsh aster, you know, and maybe identifying these and kind of highlighting these little things that are growing in the cracks that are unmanicured. And I don't know, that's just one thing that I was thinking of.
I think, as I drove into campus today, I was really paying attention to my surroundings, and I saw a beautiful flower bed with purple tulips, which of course is our school color, but they were standing right to attention. They were probably the straightest tulips I had ever seen. And so I love the idea that Chris, rather than going around and looking at all those very particular plantings on campus, he's walking around looking into the cracks and the corners that nobody else does, that maybe the groundskeeping staff are not paying attention to, but where these little weeds and these little interventions just very naturally are occurring. And that's something that you're documenting through the website, isn't it, Chris?
I have a really great relationship with the men and women that are the groundskeepers. And there was this one little marsh aster that I talked to everybody and we were protecting it, and it went to seed. And it wouldn't have if these guys hadn't, they missed it a few times accidentally. But then I asked them to let it go, and they did, and it went to seed. So I just thought that was beautiful. Now I'm going to mute. No.
Oh. Kieran, tell us about some of your plans for digging, because the idea is that you're going to do, activities together, but there will also be things that you do alone. But essentially, the website becomes kind of a live archive or repository for, documentation of these kinds of activities to kind of bring these together and share with everyone. Would you talk about some of the things that you're going to be doing in the coming months?
Well, hopefully when the studio can open, I can start doing some workshops with specific things in them. So like making your own clay from the garden clay, that kind of stuff, but then also the task sheets that we have on the website already, using them. So like children or even adults can get involved and they can start making their own work by just following the task sheets quite simply. We've also got how to dig up your own clay and how to process it on there. So if they wanted to do it in their own gardens, depending on lockdown, they could start right away. And same with everyone in Texas, they could easily just go into the garden. Like, you don't have to be in a group setting or in an institution to be able to do the stuff that we're talking about for the show. Like, you can be inspired and easily just go and do it in the garden.
Right. There's some great activities for the whole family to get involved with clay and think more broadly about natural materials. And now, of course, is the perfect time to do it. We welcome spring tomorrow. So I think I'm starting to see people in my neighborhood really get out into their yards, their gardens, and start tidying up after the ice storm and the winter. And things are starting to kind of creep out, and I wouldn't say bloom, but we're getting there. So I think it's a great opportunity for those kinds of activities that you're highlighting there. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know we'll see. We have some of those on the website. I realized we actually had a couple more images that we wanted to share, and I think this will be kind of a good segue into looking at the website, because you did an exhibition together in Manchester, and I think so if we look at a couple of these images, can you talk us through what this experience was like? Because I think this is also really important to think about. Like, you're working individually, but you're sharing ideas, but the mechanism then of how to share that with a wider audience. And typically for artists, that's through an exhibition, right? Before a website. But I think the work that you were doing together here, from my position as a curator, sort of looking at this project, it really helped me understand how you were going to work together for our project. So could you just show us a couple of images and tell us what we're looking at and how that exhibition evolved?
I'll go first with this. So it was really nice to bring Chris to Manchester and have him see my old art school. And one of the things that I'll never forget about is when we had all our things in the gallery before we'd set anything up. And then we were all just stood to a side, and then one by one, we were all just starting to place things. And it was quite this like surreal thing, like it was so playful. And we weren't really talking to each other, but we were engaging with the work. And, you know, if I placed something and one of them thought, oh, actually, let's put it somewhere else, you know, we were just playing with all the objects, like curating it in ourselves in a really experimental way. And I think the final product of it all, it worked so well together. Like you can see in this image how playful the monkey is with the wobbly bobbly cactus.
Yes, I think there's only 3 slides. An apology that they might be a little bit dark. I have a terrible archival system on my computer. Thank you, Kieran. I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you know, group exhibitions can cause artists lots of anxieties. Has one got the best wall, you know, the nicest piece of floor and all that kind of thing. And our experience was the opposite. It was like magic. I mean, honestly, the generosity of allowing the work to interfere with each other in a positive way. I mean, sort of talking to each other. And we didn't have discussions, like you're right. We didn't have discussions before. We literally just had like 3 hours of total concentration, and bingo, you know, it happened. And there is an incredible poetic reverie between all the objects and the sort of bits of furniture, which, as you can see, come from the art school. They're a bit messy. It just kind of happening. And then it's this kind of generosity, which is actually quite rare amongst many artists when it comes to group exhibitions. So thank you very much, Chris and Kieran, for you know.
I think that strongly, from my perspective, one of the things that comes through and that makes me really excited about this project is that aspect of play and chance and intervention. And I'm imagining, because I wasn't there to see, but I'm imagining the 3 of you in that space, in this unchoreographed, moving around. There's a sense of gesture and purpose, but play and fun and questioning and challenge, and kind of all like your individual studio practices brought together in this very particular moment in time. And that's really wonderful to see. I think sometimes curators can overplay their hand when they're organizing group exhibitions and actually maybe lose a sense of that comes directly from the artist. So, you know, I'm a proponent of projects that involve artists as curators to challenge my own practice. So this is really fun for me to see, and I'm excited that those elements are going to show up in Digging over the coming year.
Well, I sure already see seeds of the playfulness in the website, and it can never be the same as 3 people moving through this physical space. And we weren't communicating with words, but we were communicating with just maybe the way we stood, you know, and then someone else would go in and generosity is too, I mean, as big a word as that is, it's not a big enough word to describe what we were doing in that room. But it's the basis. It was that being generous with everything, you know.
And that idea too of accessibility, of inviting people to join you in some of these activities, that's something that we'll be able to do through the website. And I know you've got some plans for that. People that want to participate and collaborate with you can reach out and contact us, and we can work on whatever those projects are and bring those to the website and include documentation of those activities too. So I know, like on the website already, I think we have a video by one of Brigitta's students digging. You know, so I think over time there'll be other things that will add to that sense of play. So it starts with the 3 of you, but then there are these lovely sort of ripples out into a wider community, a virtual community that is connected to digging. And then hopefully those people are creating their own digging ripples and rituals kind of as they go. So that generosity of spirit and playfulness that you had in that initial exhibition and working together like that, I can see, the possibility of that continuing through aspects of the website. So I think, is there anything else that you want to say specific to digging, or should we just jump in and look at the website a little bit and help people navigate their way through? I mean, obviously people can just go online and have a look and see for themselves, but there's a couple of things that maybe that we want to point out. So let's have a look at the website together. And while we're doing that and sharing that with people, I will say, if anybody has any questions, please do put them in the chat. We will pick those up and we will answer your questions. So if there's very specific things you want to ask the artists or find out about the project, you can do that. But here we are with our website, and when you go to diggingtogether.com, and we thought that was very important, actually, just the URL for the website. The idea was that it was a communal practice, a place of community work in a sense, of bringing people together to this particular site. So even just our conversations about what we were going to call the project, how we were going to host it, what it was going to look like, all of those elements of design were also sort of a bigger part of talking about digging. So when you arrive on our homepage, you have an opportunity here to read a little bit more about the exhibition. We have kind of a statement for what the exhibition is. So you can click through and read the entire full statement, or you can go on and explore a little. And probably one of the easier ways to explore is to go through our menu, but we have all kinds of things, from images to essays and text pieces, videos, did I say that? Photographs. And the idea is that we'll invite people to join us. So you can just begin exploring and creating your own hole and digging through yourself. And as you start scrolling through the site, different images will pop up, and you can click on those and look at them to learn more about them. There's a drawing by Brigitte, and it's actually a drawing over a photograph of a building here on campus, and she's reimagining what that landscape can look like. And so tell us a little bit about that drawing and that experience, Brigitte, just while we're on that for a second.
Oh yeah, the immaculate lawns. So I mentioned earlier on the sort of idea of creating site responsive work, or being inspired by sites, and within the ecological crisis and TCU being a university, I've imagined. So I've created 24 drawings in total, I think, yeah. And I imagine the campus being a campus for the green areas of the campus being areas of learning and food production. So rather than just for recreation, as in playing games and sun lounging, I wanted it to I want to literally dig up the campus and provide the areas of food production, textile production, and kind of eco-friendly assembly areas. So this here is a visualization of a vegetable plot, or we call it an allotment, with a little chicken coop and all, because these are halls where students are living in anyway. It seems like most logical that they actually would be encouraged and learn about growing your own vegetables. And if it is like in the UK, most students have chosen to become vegetarians. It's even more important to learn how to grow and maintain your vegetable production.
Yeah, I love this idea too. And I'm just mentally crafting the letter that I'm going to write to the chancellor to ask if we can dig up a lawn somewhere here on campus in the next year. So wish me luck with that. Let's see what we can do. Can we dig through a little bit more, or even go back to, let's see, we're going to keep digging. We're going to, okay. Actually, here's a little, this is just a sample. You can get to the document another way. But here, what Kieran was describing, some of the activities that she's doing with the people working with her in her workshop. So we have some simple PDFs that people can look at and print out, so they can make their own little pinch pot. I haven't tried this yet, but I'm going to. Okay, let's see. We go a little bit further. What else have we got here? Oh, okay. What's this one? Oh, that's making a little, that's for bees, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the hydration station.
Okay, a hydration station for bees. I love that idea. So, okay, keep digging. Lene is our master gardener today. So, Chris, this is what you were talking about just before, the life in the cracks.
Yes, but it reminds me, you see, this is a funny little grass that doesn't take much to live, but it's in seed right now. And around here someplace I have, this is the same little plant. And Brigitte had talked about some kind of little seed pods, and I'm thinking we'll make little seed bombs out of this particular grass because it has a chance to grab and hang on.
Nice. Okay, so seed bombing. That could be something to do. A little bit of guerrilla gardening, right?
Yeah.
Lene, could you take us up to the main menu just so that we can share that? So how we've just been scrolling through the website. If you don't want to do that, you can actually just do it kind of the old-fashioned way and go through a menu. So if you go to Explore the Dig and click on that, then that will, it's going to try and take you, there you go. So if you scroll down there, you can see there's examples of all different projects that Chris, Kieran, and Brigitte have been working on and that we've been uploading. So what's going to happen is over time, that list of objects, that archive of images will change over time. So if you're a collaborator and you want to get involved and participate, this is where your work would be featured. And we have a couple more things on there, some more drawings from Brigitte, the digging videos, we have an essay. And let's see, how about, is there one that you want to click on there? We'll go back. Let's see. Okay, so if you want to find out a little bit more, I gave a very brief introduction to the artists, but you can find out more about them in great detail and go to their websites. So there's a lot of information there. So if you want to, reach out to Kieran and say, hey, how do I make a cup and saucer from the clay that I dug up in my backyard? She's going to be able to tell you. So I'm not going to reveal much more other than, you can see for yourself there. The About section just again gives you kind of a longer statement about the exhibition and the motivations for this website in much the same way as we've been talking. So you can get a real clear picture just from reading that text. But essentially, the website is there for our viewers to enjoy and to hopefully become participants. And I think, and a nice little growing seed animation right at the very beginning there. Brigitte, Chris, Kieran, anything you want to add in terms of perhaps a request or a prompt for anybody that's interested and might want to get involved and contact you? What are some areas that you'd be interested in learning about or hearing from people, perhaps working in different places around the world?
Well, I mean, I still can imagine that, participants from all over the world, if we all start digging, we're going to meet somewhere in the middle.
Actually,
wonderful kind of fairy tale kind of way. I mean, we always kind of think like, well, actually, why go around the globe if you could go just kind of through it? But I mean, we are all kind of involved in education in one form or another, and I think so for me, it will be great to work with some students remotely at TCU to do some wild sowing. I mean, seeding. But also to maybe put some of the visualizations of how the campus could look differently into the public domain using these barn signs. You call them barn signs, don't you? Yard signs.
Oh, yard signs. Yeah, putting yard signs up. Yeah.
Yard signs. I'm going to do a summer school with students here in Manchester around art and ecology. So again, I think what the work coming out of that with the students will be uploaded onto Digging. So we are now here in England in spring, I guess, and you're part of the world as well. So I think it would be great if we, with the season, change change the you know, the kind of the content and the activities on campus. So we must go and sow if in autumn we want to harvest. And so you get you to make some peach jam or whatever.
Oh yeah, I will. I'm thinking about my own contribution, which is I have some peach trees in my front yard. So yeah, this year I will probably do some kind of something with those peaches rather than just eat them all. Maybe make some jam and be a bit more generous with my peaches. But as Brigitte says, she's going to be working with her students. So they'll be responding to prompts and ideas from digging and making things in England, but then hopefully shipping a few things over here, physical objects that we can place on campus, and that our students here, then working with Chris, will have an opportunity to respond to. So there's just going to be this sort of transatlantic call and response, not only through the website in virtual ways, but in very physical ways. We hope to be able to send small things to one another. And on that note, I know, Brigitte, you have sent some objects that Chris's students will be working with that involve more of a performative element. Could you talk about your kimonos for a second?
Oh yeah, oh yes, they have arrived. Good.
Yes.
On campus there is this standing stones. There are these standing stones.
It's called Froghenge.
Thank you, Froghenge. Froghenge, and it is very nice to kind of think that the Froghenge obviously is kind of taking a generous borrowing from Stonehenge, one of the most ancient structures, which are pagan, based on pagan religion and enacted in summer solstice time. So hopefully I will be having there's 4 kimonos, 4 students wearing these kimonos and keeping social distance of 2 meters, balancing bamboo sticks and reciting you know, plant manuals or something along those lines. Are the bamboo sticks, are they already?
Yeah, Chris has already harvested his bamboo sticks, yeah, so he's getting ready.
In and around Froghenge, did you say? Froghenge, yeah. Froghenge. So that's kind of one thing, but then also I quite like them to be like mysterious surveyors, you know, like people who are measuring land and surveying sites. So I will give them performative instructions in kind of taking some string and kind of pretending to measure the lawns, or not pretending, but to measure the lawns and to mark them up for future use in a different way until hopefully that will be fine, because it will be very unobtrusive to the kind of manicured kind of, you know, areas. But that's sort of, they will be, I mean, don't ask me why kimonos. Kind of maybe to bring another part of the world into the equation.
Well, I mean, it's you know, I do think, you know, there's this understanding of different cultural approaches and representations and use of landscape, and also just conversations around clay that are international and transcultural. And just to going back to one of the images Chris showed us in the background of the landscape he showed us was a Tuchikama kiln. Chris, could you talk about that for a moment? Because actually that is a connection that we make through your practice to Japan.
That's huge. It would be, so what we did is we took clay from the site, constructed a kiln based on,
and this is in Arkansas, right?
Yes, based on the most primitive kiln, high fire kilns, and then we made objects from clay from the site, and then we used the timber from the site to fire the pieces. So it just, yeah, but there was I worked with a group from Japan and we got that going. That was so
right.
Cool. That was such a brief.
But that was such an amazing, you know, to use such an ancient technique from Japan to really, you know, recreate that in a sort of authentic Arkansas way. So as such.
We fired the kiln twice and we hope to fire again, you know.
So those links to Japan are there in some way, shape, or form in your practice already. So it's just kind of thinking about those traditions and different approaches.
No, that's actually a very beautiful link. Thank you very much. You're right, and also, I mean, I have had the privilege, like kind of Chris, having been in Japan, the relationship to nature and the ritualization, you know, with the Izo shrine of you know, the sunrise and the sunset, and you know, it is very, very beautiful, and maybe subconsciously, anyway, I just kind of some voice told me that I should make. Kimonos, and
well, we'll be doing a
yeah,
TCU version of that around Froghenge on the solstice. I mean, this is a really fascinating cultural hybridity. I was trying to find the polite word rather than say clash. That there's a hybrid notion in how you're bringing these ideas together and exploring them. And you know, from a pedagogical standpoint, just to use that word for a moment, I mean, this is great for students on both sides, you know, for our students here at TCU and for the students in Manchester and for the communities that Kieran's working with. So there's a, you know, there's a bigger, that ripple effect again, I guess I should talk about, that we're using that as a way to open new ways to teaching and for research for students. So we should explore the Japanese connection in all of this somehow around Froghenge on the solstice. Okay. I fear we're on a tangent, and I'm looking at the clock and we're just coming up on 1 o'clock. We're almost at the end of our session. I've been looking to see our questions, and actually I think we've been answering most of them. So Chris, Brigitte, Kieran, just to kind of, as we start to wrap things up, are there additional things you want to tell us about what's coming up with digging, or what you'd encourage people to do in their own digging practices?
I think just keep an eye on the website for all the updates, and then all the task sheets as well. Definitely just get involved and do them. One that I'm really excited about is the How Fertile Is Your Garden, with the berry in the underpants.
Oh yeah, go on, tell us about that.
So yeah, that's basically it. So there's a task sheet that'll be coming up onto the website on how to test how fertile your soil is in the garden or wherever it is that you're doing. And basically you just need 100% cotton underpants, and you bury them, keep an eye on them, and the more decomposed they are, that's the best thing. That's what you want to see, and then that's going to tell you that your soil is
so holes in your pants means prize winning vegetables. Yep. Is that what you're telling us? Okay, got it. Yep. I love it. Okay, I'm definitely going to do that. Oh, actually, we've got, I do have one other question. Let's see, how can students contribute to the website and digging? Well, you can just contact the artists. If you look through the website, if you are nervous about doing that because you're intimidated because they're so inspirational, they are very approachable. This website is all about access for you. So contact the artist directly or contact the galleries. And there's also a question, could this become a community project in the future? So yeah, I mean, actually, how do you feel about that, artists?
I think, just to answer the first question, I believe that once we all got our head, we're talking around the website. The idea is that students make something and then upload it onto the website. There is a sort of self-upload button somewhere. And then we artists and Sarah Jane are sort of, you know, kind of viewing it, get back to you if there's something missing, like kind of details about the duration of the video or something like this, or the size of the work. And then maybe sort of once a week, we will then upload the work you have been produced. The greater theme, of course, is ecology, the campuses, and changing those campuses to more kind of holistic places, I think.
Right, imagining new places or function or uses of land.
Yeah, and also, like, you know, we want to also use it as a sort of expanding resource site for, if you read some interesting essays on art and ecology, then, you know, we would like, you know, there is a section on the library, on the website, where we have the sort of, you know, just a feed of
Yeah, we're building a bibliography. So you can reach out to us and let us know of any books or articles that you think we should be reading, because we, obviously we're still in a learning process. But certainly, as Brigitte says, if you contact the galleries or the artists directly, we'll give you instructions on how to upload your materials, and we'll communicate with you through that whole process. And then you'll see your work on the website too. So it is really that simple. And just maybe this is a nice way to sort of finish off, is to think, okay, we're looking at doing this project for a year. I mean, obviously your practices continue. This is the way that you work, but we're focusing on it for a year or so with this website. What happens, what would you like to see after? Maybe it's too early to ask you this question, but, potentially what could be the legacy of the website? Do you see it as a resource for future diggers? Do you see it as a call to arms for people to organize their own community projects? I mean, this is a lot. But
thank you very much.
Yes, just to give you that responsibility. But what are some things you would hope in a sort of, in the way that you played and shared things and were generous as you made your exhibition and through this process of making the website, is it some of those things that you hope people will take out into the world with them as they engage with digging?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just hope everyone's inspired by it and they just keep the legacy going, I guess, in a way. Like you go on there and it can stay up for as long as we want it to stay up as well, the website, can't it?
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah, so you can get involved whenever you want, and then you can make whatever you want. You can upload it and you can carry it on for as long as you want it to go on, really. It's mostly just about inspiring people to start thinking about the world and about nature and getting your hands dirty.
Yeah, get your hands dirty. And when your hands aren't dirty and they're on a screen or on your phone, if you're on Instagram, if you use the hashtag digging together, that will also start pulling together images and materials and ideas along that hashtag. So there's a kind of side virtual way that we can work on that too. But yeah, Brigitte?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about rewilding and growing. So I don't know what is in a year's time. Nobody knew a year ago what was the last year. So I can't answer the question of what the website will look like in a year's time.
Well, this is a marker. We'll come back in a year and reflect.
Yeah. But this sort of idea of cross-pollination, growing, growing between the cracks, doing this thing slightly off the main beaten track, that's, I think, what we're looking for, and in contributions. I mean, sort of, that's what we always look for, I think, as artists, and in that sense, it's like a depository of some sort, but because it's moving and it's digital, so it's kind of moving.
Yeah, it's dynamic in that way, how it's going to change.
Yeah, it's a moving depository in some sort. Yeah.
Chris, any final thoughts?
So
your brain space is taking up with thinking about what you're going to make next. I can just tell. Well, I think we're a little bit over our time, and I'd like to bring this to a close. And I would like to say thank you so much to the three of you for being here today, and more especially for this project and adapting and thinking about how to be dynamic, but also how to be inclusive and encourage people to participate. I think the website will do that. Here you can see some details. Go look at the site. You can look at the artist individual site, the galleries. We have lots of information for you there, but please do reach out if you have questions or you'd like to participate. But it's my absolute pleasure to be here today with these three. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Brigitte. It's been a joy to work with you on this. I know that we've still got lots of work to do over the year. It's going to be amazing to see how the website changes. And so with that, I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to ask people to enjoy the first day of spring tomorrow. Think about digging, think about how you're going to get involved, and be in touch with us. Let us know about your digging projects. We're going to keep you updated through the website. We'll be sending out reminders on our social media of the galleries to let you know when things are changing, things are added, or other events that are upcoming. So please stay tuned to our social media for any digging updates over the coming weeks and months. But until next time, we'll get an update from the diggers here, the 3 diggers. We'll get an update from them in a few months to see how things are progressing and find out more about their projects. So until next time, my thanks to Lene for keeping us on the technical track as ever. I appreciate that. And till next time, happy digging, happy spring, everyone. Take care, and we will see you later in the year. Thank you.